Good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. I'd like you all to help me welcome for the fourth time to the University of Texas, the Alash Ensemble. So today we're going to be introducing singers to vocal style that the Republic of Tuva has become known for, throat singing. Is everyone familiar with what throat singing is? Are you here just kind of on a whim? Is there anyone who's really practiced for a long time? Cameron? Okay, so a lot of you all are beginners. Great. I will hand it over now to Sean, who's been the manager of the Alash Ensemble for the past several years, and who lives in Tuva and has direct experience working in the National Orchestra of the Republic of Tuva. And we'll guide you through a step-by-step lesson and introduction to the vocal art of throat singing.
Alrighty, well, yeah, we'll, between the five of us, hopefully we'll be able to do something enlightening and interesting for y'all. We do have some folks here. Elliot himself has also been practicing throat singing a whole lot, so we've got a couple of people here who can kind of show you where it is that you're aiming for. Now, I'm assuming, since this was advertised as a throat singing workshop, everybody who's come here has come with the desire to learn, at least begin to learn, how to emulate this art. If I'm wrong, let me know. But if I'm not, I'll just assume that we all want to learn how to do this, and we'll talk a little bit about it. I think really the first thing we need to figure out is how much you folks know about Tuva. Now, does everybody at least know where Tuva is? If you don't know where it is, raise your hand. All right, well, we're going to start from there. Basically, Ian, Vladidorju, and Ionol, who are the three musical performing members of Alash, are from Tuva. Tuva is a republic in southern Siberia. You won't find it on a world map because it's a part of the Russian Federation. But if you look on the globe or on the world map, it's just north of the western part of Mongolia. Now, as you can see, the Tuvan people are not Russians by ethnicity or by language. A better parallel that you might draw is with indigenous people of North America who were here before white people came and changed the name of the place that they lived. So that's where Tuva is. Tuva is unique because most people in Tuva still retain the Tuvan language. There's about 200,000 people that live in Tuva, another 100,000 Russians and other types of folks. And we're specifically here today to present what we call very clumsily in English, throat singing. What we're attempting to do with this clumsy terminology is to refer to the beautiful art that the Tuvan people possess, wherein they produce multiple pitches at the same time with their voice. Now, we call it Tuvan throat singing because it's from Tuva, and because we don't really have any better way to describe it. To me, it's a really poor description because everybody uses their throats to sing. There are also other descriptions such as harmonic singing and overtone singing, but those also carry their own connotations and apply to things that are not necessarily Tuvan as well. Now, in Tuvan, we don't have the problem with nomenclature because in the Tuvan language and in the Tuvan way of thinking of it, this singing is viewed much more like an instrument. And just like an instrument in an orchestra or a band or what have you, there are many different kinds. They're constructed differently. They have different voices. They have different timbres. Some are louder, some are softer. And in one way, you can kind of say that there's an infinite variety of styles within Tuvan throat singing because each individual performer may have a different name for their variation on what they do. The reason for this is because the bass technique that you're using, as opposed to any other overtones singing that I've become familiar with in the world, whether it be Western or other types of singing that enhance overtones that are practiced by indigenous people, with Tuvan overtone singing from a purely musical standpoint, you have the greatest flexibility of what you can do with your voice, and that leads to a whole range, a whole palette of things. And I think it would probably be appropriate, Elliot, if we started, since we just happen to have three master Tuvan singers with us here, to get them in on the act a little bit and have them share each of what we're going to kind of delineate as the main styles of Tuvan throat singing. Now, there's always been debates about that. How many styles actually are there? How can you divide them up and stuff? For the people who sing, that's not as much of a debate. That's more people who write about the people who sing who are having that debate. So we're going to simplify it. If you, the smallest delineation you can make, and we'll find out why that is in just a half second, is you can really winnow it down to two basic techniques that you got to learn. So really at the heart of it, you can probably divide it all down into two styles. And those are the basic technique that lies at the root of the higher and the middle style that we're going to show you. And then the other one is the technique that lies at the root of the bottom style. But they're still all Tuvan music, and they still all come from overtones and physics, so they're all going to share a lot of properties. So what I'd like to do now is just give you guys a quick acquaintance with each of the styles. It's really nice to be able to hear them close up and without the interference of sound amplification equipment. So we're going to talk about the middle and the top and the bottom. The middle is called hume in Tuvan. There's different ways of writing the Tuvan language in English. I like to use this one where the letter X stands for a kind of h sound. Some people will write it KH, some people will write it CH, what have you. But hume, this is the middle style. I'm going to ask Ayanol to share it with us. The reason we call this the middle style and the reason we've chosen to present this first is because this lies absolutely at the heart of what you're going to learn. That is when we get more into the hands-on teaching phase of what we're actually going to attempt to teach you the very basic first step of, or for those of you who maybe have gotten that, how to go further with it. And what's going to happen here is Ayanol is going to establish a fundamental sound, which is going to be about in the middle of his range. And now, some of you might not be very musically minded, so I'll try to go light on the kind of musical terminology here. But basically, you have this original note, the fundamental notes, the basis, the foundation. But by adjusting, by moving an area back here in the back of his throat, kind of at the very bottom of his tongue or the top of his throat, by changing the size of this area and squeezing at his vocal folds, and this is the thing we're going to try to learn how to do, is how to squeeze. Because what happens is when you learn to just squeeze here and you keep everything else on top of it open, you change the very nature of your sound where you subtract a whole bunch of overtones that are already there out of it, and you begin to highlight the ones that you want. Then this guy in the back here is a further filtration. It's like a selector that's going to select, and you're going to hear that as a second note that Ayanol is going to get. That one's going to go up and down and make a melody. That's coming from back here, from the back of your tongue making a different size. It's all about physics. It's all about how certain notes want to resonate in different sizes and spaces. And you're actually going to hear a third note that is created in the space between Ayanol's teeth and his lips, again, because he's established everything before it. So Ayanol, I'm going to hand it over to you to show off the middle style, the really the core of it all, hume. On into the higher style then. I had no idea we had such a short time this afternoon. I'm terribly sorry for. We're just going to move right on into the Sagut style. Ayan Chirajik is going to share that with us, and he's going to take the exact same technique that Ayanol used, which bases itself on the squeeze at the vocal folds. But he's going to add one thing. You saw how Ayanol's mouth pretty much stayed the same shape there. His lips remained open in a kind of a ooh sound. That's all going to stay the same for Ayan, but he's going to take his tongue and he's going to flip it up into his throat, into a certain shape where he creates another extra couple of spaces that provide extra filtration. What happens is his overtone note that we heard in Ayanol's singing, which is more or less present at the same volume as the other couple of notes, he's going to make that a lot louder. And the fundamental note, he's going to make it a lot, he's going to put a mute on it. It's going to get a lot quieter. It's still going to stay there, and it's important that it's still there. but it's going to become a lot less audible. Now, this is the style that a lot of folks think when they first start trying to learn that they're getting, because there's a real easy fake way to do it, which we'll get in when we get into the hands-on. But you've got to be able to do this first. So this is called the Sagut style. Ian, if you would share it with us. So these two that we just talked about, they both come from the same basic technique. And again, only once you're competent with the hume and you really learned how to get the squeeze at your vocal folds, that's really the main thing. Only once you're comfortable there do you start going on into the Sagut. And it's important because otherwise you'll be trapped on the dark side of this fake way of doing it that will lead you nowhere, you know, at the bottom of a pit in Hoth or something. So now, this other one is another technique, and sometimes when people are starting throat singing, sometimes they'll get one of the other easier, and then it'll take a long time to get one or the other. So if the basic technique that we're going to attempt to teach you for these first two styles doesn't work out, this is one that you can also try. Or if this one you really want to do and it doesn't work out, you might be able to start with the basic technique for hume and Sagut first. I'm referring to Kargara is the name of it, at least that's how we would say it in a Midwestern accented American English. In Tuvan we would say Kargara, Kargara. And what's happening with Kargara and what you're going to want to attempt to do as far as your first step in getting this sound is everybody produces a voice through the action of two muscles in their throat that are called the vocal folds. The vocal folds vibrate together like a person's lips on a trumpet. It vibrates the air inside of your throat, resonates in your chest and other resonators in your body, and that becomes your sound, your individual voice. Now, on top of those little muscles called the vocal folds, there's another set of muscles that look just like the vocal folds, but they don't do any work, so people call them the false vocal folds. They just sit there, who knows what they do. They just kind of get a free ride. But when you sing Kargara, what happens is you get those false vocal folds to move together as well, and they begin to vibrate. Now, they only vibrate at half the speed as your original vocal folds, so it produces a note that's an octave lower. So this is the fundamental situation going on in Kargara. However, at the same time that you're engaging these false vocal folds, which you will find takes a sort of, you don't want to do it too tight because you'll choke yourself, you don't want to do it too loose because it won't go anywhere. And when you start, you want to actually start in your range higher than you think you would, because once they engage, that's where the low sound comes from. You don't want to start low in your natural range. And then, once you've got those guys going, and once you're able to engage them like a motor, then, and you will see when Body Doors U demonstrates for us, you change the vowel sound that you're making in your mouth. Again, it's about the size and shape of spaces. And you change that from an ah to an a to an oo, and that will help you to create the high overtone melody on top of the drone, the low drone that's produced by the false vocal folds. So that is the Kargara style. Body, if you would be so kind as to share that with us. three basic styles, just so you have the sort of terminology for as we refer to it throughout the rest of this afternoon. And if you go on, you got Hubei in the middle, Sagut on the top, and Karagra. That was the last one we just heard on the bottom, Karagra. So let's see, how do we want to handle this now? Do we want to start making people sing, or what?
Yeah, I think maybe we should all attempt Humei, if that's okay with everybody else, which is the middle style, which I think is probably the best style that we all begin with.
Yeah, I would say what we should do, since we have such a short time and kind of a mixed crowd, we'll just kind of do this en masse, as it were. And it also helps too, because I think Elliot and I could probably both share, and Cameron as well, as people who have studied throat singing before, that you have to make some embarrassing noises sometimes. Because what we're going to try to do now, we're going to all attempt to sing Humei, right? And what I've likened it to, what we're trying to do is we're trying to learn to finally control a specific muscle in our throats that we don't know consciously how to finally control, but it's there and we can control it. When you start first trying to find that muscle and the fine control for it, it's as if you're walking into a room blindfolded with the lights out, and you've got these big astronaut gloves on, and there's one light switch over on the wall, and you got to try and find it. So at first you're going to have to kind of beat around with the astronaut gloves a lot and make a lot of funny noises. I think I'll just really quickly summarize a couple of the things that I've heard other people use as far as introducing people to the technique, and you know, if any of you guys want to share anything. But basically I've heard a couple of people. One thing is to do what's called a vocal fry. And what that'll do is this will help you to identify where your vocal folds are. It's important to distinguish that when you do the vocal fry, the sound that comes from the vocal fry at first is not the sound that you're looking for. This is merely a marker to identify where it is that you need to squeeze. And I just drank a bunch of coffee, which is like the worst thing to do before you want to throw sing. But what a vocal fry sounds like is, you remember a lot of people did it when they were kids, before they would go to bed or whatever. You just lie down there and you just kind of softly make this like dry leaf rustling sound, or kind of a crackling sound in your throat, you know. I remember I used to do it all the time when I was a kid. It's like one of my earliest memories, just sitting there. It was the coolest thing, you know. But what that does, and so this is one way that people can choose to attempt it. What it does, and again, we're being really short with this because there's a lot of information to convey in a short time. But what it does is, by cranking up, what you do is you feel like you're pushing up the throttle on that, because what you do is you found it, you feel it, and you go, okay, the vocal folds are there, and that what you do is you kind of crank it up, and that initial sound, that crackling sound, will actually go away. But if you're squeezing in the right place, you'll be able to turn your voice into the basic situation for a Humei or a Sagut style. So what I'm talking about is something like this. And you know, the other thing is, the key is you're going to know that you're really doing it right, because the other thing that people really do at first when they're trying to sing Humei, and they're like, oh, I'm going to make some overtones, is they slide their tongues way back up in the throat, and they start going like this. You want to be able to have your whole face relaxed, everything's totally relaxed, and you want to be able to make just a completely A sound, because it's just, you're just learning to squeeze this one muscle right here. So your mouth can be totally... and that you can take into Humei. So that's one technique, and then the other one that people try is they just, you just imagine kind of squeezing down here, like in the lower part of your chest, because it's really, it almost feels lower than it actually is located, because when you think about squeezing in your throat, again, you really squeeze more up here, so you get more into the... So for some people, you know, maybe that little guy doesn't work, and you just want to think about going from, here's a normal voice, and the only thing that's getting tighter is here, and that's going to be important if you're going to go on later. So with that, shall we all?
Yeah, let's try one.
Yeah.
So it probably would be best to just start, I think, from the crackling sound. So if everyone can just kind of make the sound. Great. So now you want to voice it. It's a bit like a sung note. So you can kind of move from the crackle to a sung note, right?
probably get people are doing it.
With that much noise, it's not finding where you're at.
Oh, you know what? That's a really good point that you raise, and because it is hard with that much noise around, you know what you're doing. So you can go like this, and this will route your individual sounds right up in your ear. Oh, it works really well. Because that's a problem. People are afraid to do it themselves by themselves because it sounds terrible. But when you do it all together, you can. So this actually does work.
We can do it.
So as a traditionally trained vocalist, when I'm watching you do that, I see I want to try it for my diaphragm
Yes, you
because
do.
I see
That's good.
that your pressure the in your neck and your face is changing. So when you mean tighten up your muscles, what exactly?
That's a really good.
Do you mean your diaphragm? Do you mean push down? I mean, where are we talking?
Well, now, and that's a really excellent point. And I was just about to mention when we're starting. This is the same as all other singing or like playing a wind instrument. And so Alexis is talking about good breathing from the diaphragm. So if you don't have a background in singing or wind instrument, really, you want to make sure that, number one, you have a fairly good posture, you know. And when you take your breath in, the people initially, if they're not trained for it, you say take a deep breath and they go, and they want to just deep breathe in their chest. And that's not the way you take a deep breath. You take a deep breath by actually, you feel your gut expanding and you draw it in from here. You're opening up your diaphragm. And so your gut gets really big and expands, you know. And when you push too, when you're pushing the sound, it's still the same push that you would use if you're playing a saxophone or if you're a singer. It's still the good, and you'll feel it. You'll feel a push from your diaphragm. And what's happening with the tension here is it's actually like a bellows. The bellows is pushing ear from the air the same way it always does, but it's just got this really much smaller aperture to go through. That's why Kume singers can sing Kume for longer, because the air is coming out faster and it's coming out harder, but there's less air coming out. But yeah, you absolutely want to make sure you have a good supported, because if you're trying to do it like this, you'll just be defeating yourself, because you're not, you want to be open up, not super like tight or anything, but you want to be nice and sit up and everything. So it's a really good point to bring up. Yeah, I would love to. INL says you can do it like this. If you want. I don't know, do we want to try it again? Does anybody feel anything? Any questions so far? Do we just want to roll it out one more time?
Or does anybody have the godsend desire to just sing in front of everybody? With your critique?
Anybody who feels like they're something like this? What's up? Kamerana? Tas pas English? Han camera? I can almost pick on you, Cameron.
Okay.
Just to give you a little bit of an Ianol and I, a couple of years ago, taught throat singing for a week with a group of singers in Williams College, right? Yeah, Williamstown, Massachusetts. Cameron was one of our students at that time. All of our students are professional singers. They formed an ensemble. They learned extended vocal techniques and then had composers compose pieces for those techniques. The ensemble's called Room Full of Teeth, and it's gone on to do really well. They're doing really neat stuff. So I know Cameron from before, and we dragged him through a week of throat singing lessons. So Ianol wants to pick on Cameron as far as showing the beginning of what we've been working on. So. And also, if you could add any sort of notes from when you were going through anything that worked for you.
Well, basically tightening here. I mean, with good pressure, good breath support right there helped me a lot, and feeling it kind of right in there. And
or the collarbone, or just a little bit here.
But really, just for me, it was emulating a lot.
Just
listening to the records and listening to you guys a lot.
Yeah. So do you want to share some Kume for these folks?
Okay.
All right.
I just had lunch.
So you hear how his voice is different though, something like that. It's So there's what you can aim for at first, because you see how he's still pretty free and loose up in here, but he's able to squeeze and make his voice, that's really the most important thing. And then, maybe we should so once you got that, you want to make your mouth into a no shape. And remember this, again, we have such a short time that this is a small gift that we can give you, and you can go home and practice it for those of you recording over. So once you're there, then your mouth goes into a new sound, and then you start, there's a piece of your mouth, of your throat, that when you say yo 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 yo, everyone just try that once. That little guy, when that moves, by learning how to move that up and down in discrete amounts, that's going to pick out your note. So you get the right sound, you put the lips in the right shape, and then you start moving that guy that moves around when you say yeah, and all of a sudden you start to listen and you begin to learn where your scale is at. You know, what position you have to be in. And that's a really important thing, is just to listen a lot and use your ear and listen to yourself, honestly, a lot too. So those are kind of like the next two steps in the Hume style. Do we want to talk about Kargawara real quick for a second?
Probably.
Yeah.
These are the two basic techniques. Good
Um,
question.
Yeah, for the Hume, so if we get through the I don't know.
Finding the squeeze at the vocal
The
folds.
squeeze, yeah, finding the squeeze. Where do you start looking for the overtone in terms of what do you do? I mean, obviously it's not a complete scale, so I mean, what are the arpeggios?
It's a
of the
complete
equivalent?
scale, it just has different notes than other scales. But I mean, it's
Of
still,
course, and not a complete.
it's not a diatonic scale.
Well,
Or
yeah.
chromatic.
Chromatic
It's a
is the word I'm
pentatonic
looking
scale.
for. Right. So, what notes are there, and where do we find them?
Well, what's really neat about it is, number one, it's a pentatonic scale basically, because the pentatonic scale comes directly from overtones, and they're
Right.
the most constant intervals that come from overtones. Except you won't find the interval that's an 11th very often, or the 4th. That note is very often excluded, even though it is in the pentatonic scale. And what's really interesting is, actually, when you get the basic technique, when you learn to squeeze at your vocal folds, you're already going to start hear overtones coming out. That's what's cool. You don't have to make the overtones come out. Don't even think about overtones. That'll totally confuse you. Think about getting the right sound, because when you squeeze in the right place and when you do it and you get the right sound, then your overtones are going to come out. You know, I'm just singing, oh, you know, oh. I'm not doing anything there, but there's already overtones. So it's a real short step from oh. And the thing there and I think part of the end of your question there was about getting the scale and where does that come from?
What you're obviously closing your lips to
That's
help
right.
this, but it's obscuring what's going on inside, so I can tell what.
Oh, because you can't tell what's going on inside the throat, right.
Well, I can't see what's going on inside of your mouth
Yeah,
either,
yeah.
which is.
Your tongue remains relaxed and flat, the front part of your tongue, because your tongue's actually a big, fat muscle, right? Your tongue, actually, this is like the tip of your tongue, but then it goes back in your throat, and it's all big and fat like this, right? And so this part of your tongue, that remains flat and low and relaxed, actually, as a matter of fact, because later on you can actually bring that in too. That's what you're going to flip up to make sagut. You know, when you make sagut, your tongue comes up like this and changes shape inside of your mouth. This is the back of your tongue. Like if this is a dude or a lady here, you know, kind of like this. This is a mouth here, right? Okay. You know, this is the mouth and this is the throat. And this area, this is the tongue, right? So back in Hume, when the tongue is flat like this inside of the mouth, okay, the selector, okay, the squeeze is down here. This is the squeeze right down here. This guy here, this big lumpy bit that's way in the back, that's what moves up and down. That changes the size of this space here. This is a space, so like this is the top of the throat here, and this is the throat, okay? And I know this is a horrible drawing, but you know, I'm just really trying to roll out a lot of information at once. So this guy, that's what, when we go yo, 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 this guy moves up and down. And so by being able to move it up and down more or less, this note, okay, this is the beginning. This is where we get that filtered out sound that we just showed you. Then this is the selector, and this guy goes up and down. And the lips come down, I'm going to draw that. The lips come down into this boob sound. But so those are the mechanical parts that are working if you want to talk about looking inside. And actually, if you go to our website, alashensemble.com, there's a links page as well, too, which has a lot of information about throat singing. And there's even some pictures, so everyone has a different way of visualizing it, everyone has a different way of coming at it. So for some people it's really good to see these pictures that were taken when these poor throat singers had cameras shoved down their throats. But so you can see what the folds are doing, or you can see from the side, x-ray ones which were non-intrusive. You can really see what the tongue is doing too. So, the key thing is first to get this squeeze. And once you've got that squeeze and you've got that as opposed to basic sound going, then the lips coming down into this O or O type sound. And then if you just start experimenting by making vowel sounds that start with the diphthong y, all of a sudden you start to hear notes come out. And then if you listen to a lot of Tuvan music, and that's the other thing, and Cameron kind of pointed it out, the luxury that Cameron has is that you were spending like 5 hours a day with us for 5 days a week, listening to me and Ian into his ear. And so, again, and I think for the other folks in the room that have been to Tuva, have studied Tuvan music and musicians, my colleagues, Ian and Badi and Ian, I think would agree, so much of learning this music is a process of exposure, listening to it with your ear, and trying to mimic it. I sometimes worry about exactly this type of situation that we're in, where we try to explain it too much about, what the technical aspects of it that are clearly being thought of in Tuva, but they're thought of in a different way, and they're not cluttering your mind when you're just trying to imitate the sound like a kid. You're just relaxing and letting go. Yeah?
Are there any kind of risks to hurting your vocal cords or damaging your throat or anything like that?
I would say, and I would invite other folks, I would say no. You just, when you're first trying to learn, if you ever get something that really starts to hurt, or if it starts to hurt at all, step back, don't do it for a while, drink some hot tea with some honey in it, do not push it. If you push it, I think you can probably hurt it. When you're starting Kargara and you're starting to get this sound here, those false vocal folds have not rubbed together ever before in their life, so they can be a little bit tender. And when you first start learning that low growling sound for the Kargara, it may be a little bit raw and you can't do it for too long. You shouldn't hold for long. It's like lifting weights. There's absolutely no risk to lifting weights if you do it properly. And so you go in, the first day you go in, you just start with the bar. But then you keep doing that until you're real comfortable with that, and you put some more on it. So just don't press it. And actually, maybe you know about this, but like opera singers and stuff, they get all kinds of nodes and all kinds of crazy stuff on their voices. And in Tuva, you've got 75-year-old men that have been smoking filterless cigarettes their whole life, and they can still sing Kargara or throat singing, or Hume or whatever. Which is not to say that smoking is good. You definitely shouldn't do it.
Looking through different vowel sounds, that was completely new. And you're, to summarize, and you're changing the size of the cavity
That's
in
right.
the mouth.
Exactly. And it's good to know that, because that's
And the
really,
size of the aperture, or is
The
that
aperture stays fixed.
well, in Kume, the size of the aperture stays the same, except for like when you heard Ian do something like that where his lips are wiggling. That's, but in Kargara, which maybe we should just touch on it real quick, that's when you're going, so there's a much larger change in the actual shape of your jaw, and there you're really enunciating a different vowel sound, and that's actually, in my opinion, that's actually why we can distinguish vowel sounds as different vowel sounds, because they have different overtones. An A, an ah is different than an E, and even if you just sing that by itself in a fairly loud voice, you can even hear the overtone changing there. So with Kargara, it is a big change. With Hume, it's not. The aperture stays the same. And with Sagut too, your lips, when people sing Sagut on stage, and we hope that you all come to the concert, you'll see, and you saw when Ian was doing it, you can't tell who's singing. Because the actual shape of what their lips is doing is not changing whatsoever. It's all happening back in here because he's got the right squeeze. And that's why you want to watch out for this. This is the fake Sagut. Because there's an overtone in there, when I'm doing it. But since I haven't done this, since I haven't squeezed this, that's why I'm getting the not right sound. Because this is what takes down the fundamental.
Isn't in Siget though? Does the tongue? I thought the tongue went against the roof of the mouth.
Sure does. It's the bottom of your tongue that goes against the roof of your mouth. It's kind of the bottom. It depends on the singer that you talk to too. But basically, kind of like the tip of your tongue goes up and it flattens out against the alveolar ridge, which is that ridge right behind your front teeth. And so it feels like, it really feels like your tongue has, if this is the roof of your mouth, this is the front of your mouth, it feels like your tongue is going up like this. So that's absolutely right. And then, so what happens when you've done that and you've created, your tongue is up here, that actually creates yet another little cavity to resonate. And that somehow, by the action of this, and this being a muffler now for the fundamental, it actually makes the overtone stronger because you're somehow, and you know, this is where my physics knowledge really gets bad, but somehow you're like doubly filtering or doubly encouraging that one overtone to come out. And so, all of the changes in your note have to come from back here. It's the back of your tongue that's moving around. So at the same time as you have the front part against the roof of your mouth, that y guy is still going and making the changes to the back of your mouth.
So maybe we should try singing a little bit more Hume, and then maybe touch on
And
the
roll some Carter out. Yeah.
I have a quick question.
Yeah.
Can you explain the main reason why people sometimes do the fake voice versus the proper Hume or Sigurd style, and then the main difference between the two?
The main reason is because people, when they want to throat sing and when they hear overtone singing, one of their main primary reasons they think it's cool is because you can make multiple notes at once and they want to go for the overtones.
Yeah.
Which is why I said don't think about going for the overtones. It's better to just think about the sound. The overtones will come on themselves. And the reason it's different, and you could maybe even say better, but it's because when you're making your overtones this way, that's all you can do. That's basically the beginning and the end of it. You can do some kind of neat stuff with that. But when you're making it this way, if you're like Ian or something, he's got the sabuk going, and then he starts this other warbling back here in his mouth, and he can get some warbling here, and he's got some warbling back. It's much more flexible. You have a much more, you can add ornamentations like Ian will do sometimes called a zangulaire, where you're making, you're lifting and lowering your soft palate, creating, or your velum or something, and you're creating a metallic clinking sound. So it gives you way more of a variety, and that's why you can say that there's a whole lot of different styles, because since they all come from this main thing, this is where all your original overtones are basically coming from. Once you're doing that, then you have, look at all the anatomy you have up here, you can really do a whole lot of different things, and you can even do things that are non-traditional sounding, and many Westerners who have learned Tuvan music go on to do that stuff, and that's, good for them, that's great, that's exciting, it's another great way to make music, so they may not be doing things that Tuvan people would recognize as theirs, but hey, let it, it's art. People should take it and sow it where they will and see where it can grow. So, a little more Hume, a little more.
Yeah, if you guys want to try again.
Everybody else try it again? Yep, everybody.
So if we start again with the kind of vocal fray technique and move into a sung pitch, I think that's a really helpful technique for getting you to produce this fundamental pitch that we call Hume.
Keep going. Start higher in your range, too low in your range. You want to start in the middle of your range. Don't try to make a note that's, keep going, keep singing, keep singing. Don't try to make a note that's too low in your range. Be where you're at with your speaking voice. Keep going. Just keep the throttle up, you're bringing it in, It's alright, just think about the squeeze from down here. Squeeze it in here. Nobody's coughing yet. Ian always, where's he go? Ian, that's his number one good job moment, is if you cough. How you guys doing? Yeah! Not bad. Is your tongue relaxed?
Yeah.
That you. What's your name?
Scott.
Oh, did you hear that?
Go again.
All right.
To put you on the spot.
That's okay. Try. All I'm doing is just throttling it up.
Yep, that's exactly how I thought it the first time. close.
That's
It's
right.
real close. You're still sliding your tongue back a little bit,
Okay.
but it's the right basic sound, man. You know, so just keep throttling it up, and as you continue to do it, you'll begin to sort of learn to differentiate the bringing your tongue back up and where you're squeezing, because you're kind of doing both. But it's really good, man. That's exactly how I remember the first time I got it. And that's exactly the same way I thought of it with a throttle. You're just
Yeah, I can't tell if I'm doing it right. I'm just kind of doing what you said. So
well, then we told you to do it the right way. So yeah.
Is there a tradition of women singing this way as well?
Yes,
just
indeed.
Yeah.
Because I want to hear a woman do
We
it.
might
because
actually
that's-
pass this conversation over to Liz, who's spent the past 2 years living into studying female throat singers.
I can't actually do it myself. Probably like the one bad thing that I was living there for 2 years and I never actually learned how to do it. But yeah, long story. But there is very much a women's tradition. There's a lot of women over there that do it.
Mhm.
They get quite a lot of backlash from some of the musicians because I mean traditionally it's not considered a woman's art per se.
I see.
Because you know a lot of people consider that this deep guttural sound coming out of a you know, beautiful Tuvan woman, highly unattractive. But I've been over there for the last 2 years, following around this group of women who are doing it, researching as much as I can about all the women in the past that have done it.
Mhm.
There are women going back to the beginning of the 20th century that I found,
Mhm.
who have been practicing it. So yeah.
Is it really different from, does it sound different from the way the men do it?
It sounds different only in that a woman's voice is naturally an octave higher than a man's voice, and so when women sing, they can't get the same deep tones.
Except for Mao.
Except for Mao, this fantastically wonderful little Japanese girl who's over there, and you wouldn't know it to look at her, but she starts to sing Kagura, and it's just incredible that she can sing lower than you. Sure,
Yeah,
I
she
think
comes out on the stage. She speaks Tuvan. She's been living over there for like 6 years. And so she comes out on the stage for a concert and she says, "Hello, my name is Mao. I'm going to sing you a song." Lower, I mean, but lower than that. She's really, it's like if James Earl Jones transferred into a tiny Japanese body. You know? So it's totally possible, you know, that but mostly right, it's a range thing. Paigalol, people will say grumpy things about it. I think is really the most taboo you'll see these days. Nobody really is gonna go chase you down and tell you to stop anymore. But you might have old men saying grumpy things. Paigalol will say saranjap, which means there's no breeze to it because it doesn't have that deep foundation, you know, so you don't. It's just a natural fact of physics that you have less available audible overtones when we start with a higher fundamental note. But there's a lot of women that do it. Chanchalai, she always had a great quote. A friend of ours, she's an excellent throat singer. She's been singing her whole life. She said, "Why would I not do this? How could I grow up in a place with such a beautiful art and not want to do it just because I'm a woman?" So
Right.
she pretty much nailed it on the head with that.
Yeah.
So maybe we can talk a little bit about the Kargira technique, which is the lowest of all the styles.
Yeah. Basically, all you're trying to do in this one, or the basic fundamental thing that we're trying to get you to understand as it happens, is the action of the false vocal folds. Again, really the whole idea is that it's really counterintuitive because the squeeze that you make physically is just about a little bit higher than your vocal fold. So you're thinking, I want a lower sound, so you kind of naturally want to think I got to do something lower. Not the case, it's higher. And if anything, what's really interesting about it is it's actually a little bit more relaxed than the Humei technique. And the thing is, how exactly much tension is there is totally dependent on the pitch of the note that you're trying to sing. So it's really important for both of these too. I mean, I just listened to a couple people and everyone's trying to go, you know, like way down in their range. It's really important to be at a comfortable place in the middle of your vocal range. Because if you're trying it too low, the lower the note in Kargara, the less tension that you need, so that's more finesse that you need to be able to control your false vocal folds with. So you're totally not doing yourself a favor if you try to start really low. So you really actually want to start kind of in the medium of your range because you're looking for this sweet spot of tension that is going to get those folds to start to rumble together. Almost, it's like a diesel motor starting up. You know, they've got that glow lamp, you know, and then once everything gets to the right temperature, then the chemical process starts and everything's kind of going on its own. you know, and this is the same way. Once you've hit that sweet spot of tension and you've learned to squeeze it, it's just a matter of going back to that every time. Now, for me, this stymied me for like 2 years. I really wanted to do it. I did every wrong thing that you could think of on the way to trying to do it. I lost my girlfriend, I lost my and one of the wrong ways you can try to do it is the heavy metal voice people do, the death metal voice. That's all up in the top of your throat and it tickles like the dickens. And so don't do the heavy metal voice. Other times people will be doing a vocal fry, a really low vocal fry, which we just talked about with the hume. That's not it either. What you're trying to do is, and when you Steve Sklar would always say, you have to try to growl like a Siberian tiger, and it actually makes a lot of sense because what you're trying to do is, again, you're once again in the dark room with the astronaut gloves on, and you're trying to hit the light switch by accident. So if you hit it by accident enough, then you'll realize where it is, and you can begin to more finely control it. And so what you're trying to do is, again, find the right place to squeeze right here at the bottom. And when you do this sort of growl thing, you begin to start to kind of feel it, Maybe we should all just try that a little bit. Sure. What you're trying to do is you're trying to make a growl basically by your breath. So don't try to think about vocalizing the growl. Don't think about making a vowel, a growl with your voice. Try to
Somebody got it.
That's
Been practicing for a while. I went through another workshop.
Do you want to share any insights when you found that?
I think of it like when you first wake up in the morning. You haven't had your coffee yet. And you're kind of
and it's really true because it's actually, you feel pretty relaxed when you do it. So yeah, you're just rolling out of bed at 6:45 on a Monday. You're all out of coffee. The boss is calling, Oh man. And see, the thing is, I think when you're first trying to do it, sometimes people try to over tense it. So sometimes you might want to really, if it's not coming, you're like, I can't get it, oh man. You actually want to relax a little bit. Oh man. That's a lot more relaxed. And then once you start to feel them coming together, and you begin to start to think that growl gets to be a little more constant, then you want to try to add some voice to that, where you're keeping the growl, you're keeping the physical, and you'll really feel it too, you'll feel it. And so then you want to add some voice. And then once you start to add voice, then you open your mouth. And then once you open your mouth, you just want to do it in an O or an oo sound for a while until you get it really solid. And then you want to start to experiment with vowel sounds. And I might as well just make this note while we're on it. If you do start to get in, maybe for you, sir, this is also be a useful thing now going on. As you've gotten that first growl sound, let's say, right? And you're going along. Oh. Now, a lot of people, again, why is the first reason they want to start to overtone singing? Because they want overtones. And so now, all of a sudden, they're like this newly minted Padawan with a big lightsaber, and they're waving around in every cantina in the universe, because you start to try to make all of these people go, and they think, wow, this is the coolest thing ever. Listen more to Tuvan music first, and listen to it, and listen to because what happens is, you got these guys, and they'll be making the same note for a long time, just kind of hanging out, and it's really beautiful and three-dimensional. And then when they move to the next note, it's a beautiful thing, and so you really want to scale it down and relax with it, because that will also help you if you move slowly from one note to another. You have to tune it. It's not just because the overtone series comes from physics doesn't mean that any overtone that pops out of your throat is going to be in tune. There's ways that it doesn't sound good. And so that's when you have to learn to get your ear in touch with your voice and really listen to yourself honestly. So that's for those of you who want to go on to it later, if you start to get the growl. Shall we growl a little bit more?
Sure.
Yeah. Have we growled it all yet? Yeah. It's starting to want to come in. Keep going. start on just a tiny little bit of a higher note, just a little bit lower in your voice.
It's like forming the
Yes.
same sound.
Yes,
Like
yes,
copying
yes.
the wrong thing.
No, it is the wrong thing, but it's okay. But you feel it? You're totally getting it.
Okay.
Can we start higher?
Yeah. Wait, really? I can't.
Come on, you go wake up early.
So tight up here.
Yeah.
Brow, air.
That just feels like a.
Think about it like a kind of sigh or something. Like maybe
Excess.
you're walking out and take out the garbage or something and you don't want to.
Now start on a note that's just a tiny bit higher.
Okay.
Yes, you feel it? You got it. You got it. Capture that feeling. And that's good. That's good.
Yeah, I think maybe what you're doing is working the vocal fray technique, which is the technique that you need to build on over here.
So my throat is actually
Like a
which is weird. I think I'm trying to
Just
plan
starting to
over
get the
coffee.
very tight. They're just trying to get together.
is the way that
It does kind of,
That's good. It's better than the metal.
that's how you can locate the position from which you will later sing. Once you locate that position, then move into the much more supported voice isolation.
Don't open your mouth.
I think I'm doing it right now. Actually. My son's got it.
So the target of sound and it's relative. Because again, you're using not the whole radio sound, or false.
Mine's kind of like.
So because it sounds so deep, basically, because of that. It's a falsification. It's like a start technique. You're not actually so you're seeing right on top of it, there's another set of phones that are identical. Only they never you're speaking generally. But if you like it to vibrate, they vibrate exactly half the speed. So you're seeing an entire octave. So I would say start with a note in your vocal range that's very comfortable. About a mid-range, right?
What does that mean? Very good time.
Yeah, you're a bit loose. You might try to tighten up that
That's what
position.
makes it start.
That's the yeah.
What is it?
That's a better approach. And, you know, again, right
So this is pretty much just. So it was
Where is this?
It's like a.
So, it's just part of the larynx. So, when you sigh without voicing, you just kind of make the sighing line sound.
So what is that doing instead? Okay.
I'm just trying to keep it clear. That's relative.
I think my larynx is
So once you found that position, you then want to voice it. So right now you're kind of just finding the position by sign, right? Once you found it, you then add your voice and the rest of the rest.
Imitate that sound. Or you can also think of somebody who has really rad voice, like
It takes about twice as much air as the noise.
just to keep everything lined up.
You're squeezing great attention in your English base.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. I don't know how to do that.
So it's also it's tight, but a little bit. Think about it like the.
When you do
proper nerve in the hand. If it's too tight, you kill it. If it's too loose,
There's
it's
really good to listen to.
I was thinking
Which is why some of this stuff is. Maybe that was Elliot.
I'm sure.
If you're coughing, it might be a good thing. The first moment I ever got this time, was like, yeah, reflex.
Yeah, see, it's your tongue. It's what you're talking about. It is with your tongue.
Is it supposed to be like super?
No, not terribly pain or any kind of scratching.
Here's another one.
That made me just fine in as much as a lot of people just told me, and
To the place where you want to
Well, I've been doing it for a
that
couple weeks.
in the beginning, when we first had the music using the signal to your body.
I did it by accident.
Once your body
Because
feels
Because you see some
It's basically
vibrating, sympathetic.
I find that sounds good.
I felt like it swallowed the pressure. Far down.
That's the right direction to go.
Just like halfway up.
It's actually higher.
So listen to this song.
Try opening your mouth.
So, does anybody have any questions? Where you're at? Any specific?
Is there any tradition of circular breathing drills?
No, circular breathing is pretty often aligned with throat singing, or at least people ask me pretty frequently, do you circular breathe when you throat sing? And I think that question came out of the didgeridoo tradition.
Yeah.
You know, many people say that didgeridoo players circular breathe as they play to keep that
Yeah.
fundamental pitch going. And because of like the sonic association between didgeridoo and throat singing, I can imagine that many people would think maybe there's some kind of affinity in practice between throat singing and didgeridoo. But no, even in didgeridoo, when you're playing the instrument, the musician is able to keep the fundamental pitch of the didgeridoo continuous because they're taking short breaths in
Yeah,
while keeping the sound going by, you know, squeezing or like air chambers in their cheeks or throat, right? So they're not actually circular breathing. It's a bit of a misnomer. But in throat singing, it would be absolutely impossible, in as much as there are no kind of air sacs beneath the
Well, there's no back
larynx
pressure.
and no back pressure
Yeah.
to allow you to create a continuous sound.
Not like you would know anything about circular breathing.
No, no.
Elliot is a maker and player of didgeridoos.
Well, any other questions about technique or any concerns or anything that you guys would like to cover? Anything else? You guys wanna cover?
Well, basically, just if any folks feel the excitement of it and want to go on and continue, I would say the very best thing is to listen a lot, practice a lot, don't be afraid of embarrassing yourself, and stay in touch with Elliot, who's right here at UT, and with us via our website, which is just AlashEnsemble.com, because there's a ton of links on there, like I said, about all kinds of theories and practices and stuff, and ways to start yourself throat singing, links to communities of throat singers and that kind of stuff. And my email's on there. You can always ask a question of me or the band or Elliot or whatnot. Yes, sir.
Would Ian and Badi and Ionel give us a short tune?
I think it would be good. I think that's a great idea. We have to see it by Angela Hall. I don't know what errand he was sent on, but
You might have taken a cigarette break.
oh, yeah, it's good.
Fill in
Good professional.
Can we hear them say those different styles
Yeah,
just
I'd
to
like
hear
to
what
hear.
it sounds like?
Khmer sıkıt kakra tıp seslerine adıp verin.
Sığıp.
Yeah.
Khmer. Sığıp. Khmer. Sığıp. Khmer. Ama da onun sözü olmuş. Aşık çocuklar ama
When you're speaking Tuvan, it's really important that you do the vowel sounds right. And in Tuvan, we have the O vowel sound there. So we have O and and we also have an U and U. And actually, that's really important in the singing as well. We didn't really touch on that too much, but those vowel sounds, again, because the overtone you're picking out is determined by the vowel sound that you're making, because the vowel sound determines the size and shape of the spaces that are allowing for resonation in your mouth. So, yeah, so Badi was highlighting that fact that if you say, you know, if it's going to be an O, you know, you want it to be a real clean O, and if it's going to be an U, you want it to be an U, and if it's going to be an U, you know, you want it to be an U and not an U.
So can we hear it again?
Can we hear it
again?
Khmer. Sığıp.
Kargara.
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 Kargara. Detroninga bazara sığıp.
Let me call Ayan.
Is it true? Once at the end of, they said true when they were dancing.
Shude?
True.
Shude is it comes from horse riding. It's what you say to make the horse go faster. But it's also, you know, it's also kind of come into the common parlance. Like, say we were, you know, out picking apples in an orchard or something, and I had picked a great apple and I wanted you to see it. I'd say, shoo, shoo, you know, like, check out this great apple, you know. Or you know, maybe I'm driving my car and there's somebody, you know, running a red light. I'm like, shoo, shoo, you know, like, watch out. You know, so it's a really multi-purpose word. I'm going to call it Ayan right now and say, shoo, shoo, we want you to see it. What's that? Yeah, I'm calling it right now.
Well, as we wait, is there anyone who wants maybe like specific technique instruction or anything?
I'd be interested in how he gets the high sounds over the top of the kargara. Kargara.
We can talk afterwards.
Okay.
Last thing.
I feel like it's gonna say practice.
Yeah, I'm sure. Experiment.
What's the name of this?
Take your shower, get in your car.
This is Nash Pulu. Nash Pulu.
It's all one word.
Yerden neler kara duruyor. Eylerin bunun yazan yeriz ki de olsan. Yaral yallaş işteyle yallaş ağırlanır ya da yılın kumı yarına hayat dudar olulan Kendin masana yerden neler aratıyor. Eyde yarının gönlün yazana eskide olsan. Burun dolar üstayda ver o yol ağaçta uzanın oy.
Yeah, you want to mention where the concert is? It's Friday night?
Yeah, Friday night here at UT, we'll have a concert at 7 p.m. It'll be in the Welsh building, which is over here adjacent to Speedway, and it'll be in the basement. There's an auditorium called the William C. Hogg Auditorium. It seats about 300 people. It's free and open to the public. There are no tickets, so show up, maybe a little bit early to ensure that you have a place to sit. Also, tomorrow evening, from 5 to 8, there'll be a happy hour over on the east side of Austin at a place called the Butterfly Bar. They're going to be performing there with members of the, the Austin Global Ensemble and the Atosh group, who's a local world music group.
What time is that at?
5 to 8. I believe they'll probably start playing maybe around 5:30.
Do they have a CD specifically with that song on it?
Yeah, that's on our new CD, our red CD, and yeah, we'll have those at the concert as well, at both concerts. Yeah, that's a good one.
Spread the word.
Yeah.
대학원은 주로 어째 plus 비슷한 오range 우스튼 노이치를
Thank you all very much for coming and for being interested in our arts. Thanks again.
How do we say thank you?
In Tuvan, you would say thank you. If there's one of you, you say chetterdim. And if you're saying it in as from a group, like from us to you, you would say chetterdivis. All right, thanks again for coming.
Thanks, everybody.